Miseducation of incarceration. Complicit bias infesting mass education. Black girl magic and black boy joy you often misinterpret, so the troops you deploy. Little black children with a thirst for knowledge, striving to be the first to attend a college. When the schools are crumbling and books are low, you can't help but wonder where all the funding goes. I can't help but worry for the sake of my daughter when I know there's traces of lead in the water. Preconceived notions of our boys and girls prevent you from seeing them as diamonds and pearls. The roses in concrete you intentionally overlook could be the next Bessie Coleman or Sam Cooke. Our students deserve counselors, mentors, and aides, not armed police officers carrying out raids. They deserve to feel safe, and that's common sense. So see us as humans, not dollars and cents.
Rooted deep in the soil, we sow the seeds of growth. When they uproot the real, the fake is all they know. The power within us is our voice and expression. Resilience at its finest, our presence is a blessing. We know the truth and the plots ahead of y'all. Our stories expose the bigger picture. Y'all don't want us here at all. Strength in numbers, we organize to empower. You can shoot your shot, but the rebound is always ours. This is our story.
I don't like the police.
Yeah.
I don't like the police. The police have not shown me anything good. I do not see police as credible allies and witnesses. I would not want to tell the police nothing about my child. I would not want to talk to the police at all about my child. Like, the things that I would have to say to police is don't go near my child. My child is a human, you know? But so that question is hard to come up with something like, oh, I want you to be respectful for my child. You don't have any respect. You think that you're above the law. You don't have any respect for anybody. So why would I think that you would even have enough respect to me to listen to me? You won't listen to me, you know?
Looking into my daughter's eyes, I also look into my soul. Even though I look forward to those proud moments most parents experience watching their child go through the different transitions of growth, I also prepare myself for the challenges she'll experience just because she's a black student. My name is Rolante Mims. I'm 27 years old, and I'm from Oakland, California. You know, nowadays, I look at these schools and I find there's a missing link between the connection between teachers and students. Like, there's a lot of teachers that's not from this area or even from the community that a lot of these kids that are in. A lot of these teachers ain't got the patience. The class may be, you know, so big that even if they wanted to tend to this kid's issues or, you know, the deep-rooted challenges that they don't have the capacity to do it. And then they're not even, they can't relate to the kid because they didn't grow up having those type of challenges or issues. So it's just easy to kind of, like, you know, call the authorities on somebody, on a kid that, you know, is just doing basic misbehavior things that kids do.
My name is Jessica Black. I am an African in America. The best way to describe me is without faith, nothing is possible. With faith, nothing is impossible. I'm a fighter, I'm a lover, I'm a warrior, I'm a person of strength. I'm connected spiritually to God and to my ancestors. When I look at schools, the school campuses, many of them look like the penitentiary. The language that's used, for the common area, calling it the quad, looks like the penitentiary. The fact that when you walk inside of the school and you have to be greeted by an officer, armed or unarmed, speaks volumes to you that you have to be surveillanced.
When 26% of a school is made of black children, but 73% of arrests on that campus are made on that small group of black children, those are statistics I can't ignore. These teachers nowadays may just, they ain't got the capacity to deal with a child, and because they got their phone out, they call the security guard to come grab the kid, and next thing you know, the kid is frustrated with how the security guard is trying to handle them, leave the classroom, and now the police come, and at the end of the day, something very traumatizing can happen just from a kid having their cell phone out, because that teacher couldn't really relate to that child and address the issue in a way that they needed to be heard. So, yeah, it's a huge disconnect. It's a huge disconnect.
When you look at the way that discipline is looked at in schools, it mirrors the criminal justice system. Schools in this point in time, having police is one level of it, but then there's an internal infrastructure also that exists where there's literally a preparation. Walking into the schools, and the schools, they're dirty. The classrooms are filthy.
As of right now, me and my wife don't even feel comfortable with sending our children to the same public school system we grew up in.
I don't see that the world sees my children as powerful, as intellectual, as wise, as having any level of strength. Unfortunately, I think the world sees my children as problems. I think the problem is very clear, though. It is their strength, it is their wisdom, it is their intellect, and it is their fight. My children are very direct and very boisterous, very vocal. Quite naturally, they would be vocal because when I was younger, I got kicked out of school a lot, so I had to learn new words as I was an adult in order to enhance my vocabulary. And so every time I learned new words, I made sure that I taught my children. One thing that I understood about this life is that even if nobody else cares or thinks about you, that you have to care and love yourself. You have to know who you are. And so in order to express who you are, you have to be able to use words to help say how you feel.
Some of my main fears in this society is definitely education or lack thereof, lack of support, the lack of even wanting black children to be educated. So to have to fight for that, to have to fight for things that we deserve as humans, we deserve as people, that really scares me, that she might possibly be in people's hands someday, whether it's daycare or school or wherever, where she's not valued and she's often criminalized and looked at as a threat, even as young as 2 and 3.
Why should I even send my child to school knowing that there's a possibility of her getting discriminated against because she's black or has a particular type of swagger or independence?
My fears definitely stem from my experience and the impact that I had being pushed out of school. I experienced my push out as early as elementary, like 3rd and 4th grade, being suspended, having referrals to the office on a daily basis. So that's really where most of my fears come from. And then later on, ultimately being expelled out of high school and trying to navigate getting my education and what I know I deserved and what I wanted when it seemed like I didn't deserve it in a lot of people's eyes.
Well, my name is Gerald Lanzi. I reside here in Antioch. I have a beautiful family, got 4 boys, 4 girls, 5.5 grandkids, 1 on the way. When you've raised as many kids as I have, I've been through the whole armada of the ups and downs of my kids being in school, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the unfair. To me, this is what the school system is doing. Let's see how fast we can suspend these students and get them exposed. That way we ain't got to deal with them no more.
I know people personally who went to jail as a minor and got so affected from the trauma that they developed into a lost person who can't even contribute to society.
The way the schools are today, I don't know if it's the legislature or the governing body for the schools that say one thing, that they trying to help the kids, and they really not. Because I feel that they really don't care about the kids unless the kids come from a prominent family or something like that, because the lower to middle income families, especially if you're black, Asian, or Hispanic, really don't have a chance in school nowadays. If something happened, the schools nowadays are more willing to suspend or expel a student versus trying to figure out what the root problem is and try to fix the problem versus trying to excommunicate the kids out of school.
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, my first kind of early childhood school memories weren't really good. I was probably in the first grade. I remember having lavender pants on, went to school in Florida in the South. We were all in a circle reading books, and I couldn't understand why the teacher decided to rest her foot on my back. I asked her to move it, and she didn't move it, so when I went home, my mom seen the footprint, her shoe print on the back of my pants, and she asked me what happened. And I told her that the teacher used me as her footstool. Not only did I feel powerless and disrespected when she put her foot on me, but I also felt very powerless when I couldn't help my mom when they called the police on her, when my mom was only trying to defend me. And she was polite, but she was just being very direct, and they mistook her actions for something that was criminal.
I've witnessed this racist system turn a beautiful person into someone who has virus-type tendencies that destroy our communities. Will my daughter be another example?
I think that schools criminalize parent behavior when they're advocating for their kids because they're scared. I feel like they don't know what to do with black children. A lot of teachers aren't culturally competent. A lot of schools and the way that they function aren't culturally conducive. So when they see somebody that is confident in themselves, knows who they are, those things become threatening. And what happens is people become penalized and criminalized for their actions.
My experience definitely started out as simple things like talking too much, being too charismatic in class, being full of life, but also being full of questions and being very questionable about authority and what direction and what I was taking from people who I didn't know and didn't really look like me, so I'm not quite sure if I could trust them. And then just getting older and really understanding then that I really couldn't trust a lot of people that I was in the hands of, and I couldn't really trust what I was being taught. And just the same info that they were regurgitating in schools over and over, I knew was fake, and I knew I didn't value and I didn't identify with it. So it just made it harder for me to care to be there, which made it harder for me to really behave in a certain way. And because of that, I was a target, and because of that, I was too loud or too outgoing or too whatever it may be. So
They try to come up with all these excuses why they suspend my child. And I've talked to parents whose kids have done the exact same thing, or maybe even worse, and all they get is a slap on the wrist. I think it's a double standard when it comes to how the administrators deal out justice for the youth. For the black youth, the harshest punishment. For the other minority, it's like a slap on the wrist, 15, 20 times. The black youth, first time, get them out of here.
definitely when I was targeted as young as elementary school, I knew then that I would have a hard time getting older and navigating the school system. But at the same time, they knew that I was intelligent. They knew that I was gifted in other areas, but I just struggled with authority, and that's a real thing in the Black community. And so that's something I struggled with. And then being referred out to the office and just sitting around in the office. As a young age, I missed a lot of education. There's a lot of things that I don't know now that I struggle with just because of years that I missed that they passed me, but I wasn't really educated like I feel I deserve to be. And then moving forward, getting older, as far as middle school, at that age, I feel like you're definitely seen as a target, so it's easier to call the police on me for small things. It's easier to call the police to escort me to the office just to instill fear or just to try to break me out of that behavior that they feel is so negative that Black students have. So we began to butt heads, like me and authority and police figures ultimately, because I was arrested in middle school, I was arrested in high school, and ultimately expelled, and then left out of school for about a year, year and a half, where I just didn't know what I was going to do. And I ultimately pushed myself to get back in school, and I found an independent studies who wanted to take me, and I found a teacher who I could work with, and I found a way to work around the system to get the education that I didn't realize I really needed until I was old enough and it was kind of too late in a lot of schools' eyes.
My children are negatively affected by, or have been negatively affected by, schools when they try to discipline them. The level of discipline that the schools facilitate is not out of love. It's from a level of lack. The level of discipline that they receive at home is out of love, and it facilitates self-discipline. I teach my kids that they don't need outside discipline. They have the ability to discipline themselves. Everything is wrapped around a choice. We use a lot of self-reflective methods at home because I believe that my children can think. In the education system, they're not respected for thinking. If they think or they ask critical questions, it gets dismissed. It either gets dismissed by people not listening and hearing them, or it gets dismissed by them being labeled disruptive. So it's never been helpful. It feels like the goal is not to have them in school. The goal is to push them out. The goal is to have them in the penitentiary. Both of my children, their first encounter with police ever happened in school.
And I think that's wrong that the school don't pay attention. They focus more on what they can do not for our kids versus what they can do for our kids. I know my son Josiah, he's been to the school, and I've sat in the meetings with the principal and the vice principal and tell them how the teachers are picking certain students out versus other students, and nothing is being done. They don't say nothing to the teachers because if the faculty did say something to the teachers, you would see the change in the class. But because these certain teachers have negatively picked out certain kids in the class to always accuse stuff, pick on, just make an example out of them because they don't like that particular student, is wrong. And something needs to be done.
Whether or not discrimination against our black youth gets better or worse, I hope to create a future for my children where they will help nurture their communities and have a positive contribution to society as a whole. Because for one, they either know how to operate proactively within a damaged school system, or the damaged system we see today gets fixed.
I am negatively impacted by the way that schools treat children and parents, by feeling a loss of hope, feeling like I've wasted my time, feeling like there's something wrong with my children, feeling like my advocacy is like I'm wrong for standing up for my children and what I know is right. I think that they try to get you to be against your children, which doesn't make sense to me. At the same time, I really have to say, like, because I know their ground game, I don't let them bother me. It does stress me out, though. Like, I gotta leave work to run over here. It feels like a waste of time. It feels like being on a roller coaster. I think that if I didn't have a job where I worked in community, I wouldn't have a job. As much as the school calls to come and check on this and check on that and waste your time, and they don't have their stuff together, but they expect for you to be available when they want you to be available without consideration. They drag their feet. They don't provide your children with the adequate services that they need. I mean, it's just a big waste of time.
I feel the most pride I've ever felt when I think of my children. I feel great joy as well.
How would you feel if you were sitting where we're sitting and the educators were treating your child the way you're treating our children? How would you feel if every time you looked up, they were trying to suspend your child for any and everything just to try to get your kids out the school system? You wouldn't stand for it. You'd be fighting and doing everything that you can because you don't like the way the school system is treating your child. So why treat our children any different than the way you would want your children treated?
Because this current education system teaches you to look for things that are outside of yourself to solve problems. And it's a conflict, because in our community we teach our kids to go within. And then when they go to school, that teaching gets reversed to some degree because they're saying, look outside of you. But the answers to all the things that our children need are inside of them already. And you have to be masterful in order to facilitate and pull that out. And their regimen of academics just can't facilitate that. Their thinking isn't aligned. It's very objective.
And with the great work I see people in my community doing for my youth, I believe we truly can create an environment where I won't have those fears of my child being discriminated by a school police officer and suffer from those actions.
Our administrators should take more time to listen to the youth, not just listen to them, but come together with the teachers and the faculty and actually have an ear to hear. They don't have to necessarily agree with everything that's said, but make an assorted effort to try to put policies in place where things are not so harsh for the kids. It's not such an environment to where the kids don't want to have to come to school because they feel like they're not getting a fair shake, they're not being treated fairly. Let the educators come together, listen not only to the youth, but to the parents and the problems that's going on, because don't nobody know better what's going on than the youth and the parents. So let the educators sit down, have a round table or whatever it might be, and hear people out, hear the students out, because a lot of the problems stem from the educators saying that they care about the students when all they're really doing is sitting back, let me get up, go get this check, get out to school and go home. Because that's one of the things that I've noticed when school is out, some of the first people that leave the school are the teachers. And I've seen it.
Like, you know, a lot of our kids need healing. Like, I know I needed, there was things that I went through going through my adolescence that I brought to school because I didn't know any healthy ways to deal with those issues. So if I had somebody at school that had the attention, energy, or capacity to kind of help me, you know, therapy, counseling, something to restore me, to heal me, then that'd be a lot better than just, you know, sending a police officer to come lock me up. Their job is really to just, you know, enforce the law. And if you're breaking the law, you either get rid up or you get locked behind bars. It ain't no healing, it ain't no fixing the issue. So I would want to see them being replaced with people who can relate to these kids, who know what they're going through and know how to heal and find solutions to what they're going through, instead of just locking them up. And that's exactly what the school to prison pipeline is.
Because I know it can't be easy for the black youth or any minority today to have to get up, go to school, go through the same thing day after day after day, and knowing that if they open their mouth and say anything, one, is going to be on deaf ears. Two, it could cause them to be expelled from school because they don't want to hear what's really going on. So hooray for the youth.
I think that students need more teachers who not only look like them, but really understand where they're coming from. I think that students need to be in schools that are inclusive, that they have voice in, that they have power in. I think that students need to have schools that have life skills. Like, I'm realizing that more and more students who are coming out of high school don't know how to put together a resume, don't know how to look for a job, don't know how to do an interview. Basic life skills. People graduate from high school and don't know how to apply for college. I'm realizing that the investments to get them to the next level, whatever that may be for their life, are not there. So it's kind of like surviving school and then figuring out how to live life. And so I think that if there were more people who asked students what they wanted to see in schools and actually listened to the things that they recommended, the schools could be better. But I feel like a lot of the adults don't listen to the students and don't even ask. They automatically look at them, again, from a place of lacking instead of a place of knowing.
I'm very grateful for organizing and having organizations like Black Organizing Project in place, because they make me feel extremely empowered and they allow me to make other parents feel empowered. When I go to these school board meetings and I'm fighting for other parents or I'm fighting for other students who don't have the voice or just don't feel that they have the voice, I know that I'm fighting for myself at the same time. And I look at these kids who are being pushed out and being expelled, and that was me not very long ago. So it makes me feel very whole, and it's also a very, what am I trying to say? Being able to organize for students and for their right to be educated, it brings me a lot of closure too from my experience, because being pushed out in such an aggressive and criminalized way, it did leave me with a void, and it made me feel differently about society in general. You almost feel like you're just left to the side. And if you don't have anything to rectify that feeling or to bring closure to yourself, you're left feeling empty. So when I found this work and I found an avenue where I can fight for something that directly affected me, that will directly affect my child in the future, it just brings me joy, and it just makes me happy that I can do the work, and I know that when there's people there who don't have anybody to fight for them, I'm there to fight for them.
Say that you do have to stay strong and don't give up. You have to be in this fight for the long haul. And even if you just remove your own child out of a situation, there's still a community of children in those situations. So you still haven't won anything. Until all of our kids are free, none of our kids are free.
This is my story, this is our story. Would you kill for it? Would you die for it? Reunite for it? This is my story, this is our story. Would you kill for it? Would you die for it? I'ma fight for it.